Come on in, everybody. It's time for the Southern Route. So, what's the Southern Route all about? Well, it's about Southern stuff. Southern people, Southern music, Southern food, Southern nights, Southern traditions, nostalgia, and so much more. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Southern Route. I am your host, Shannon Courier. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome in. I'm so happy that you're here. If you are already familiar with the Southern Route, welcome back. Here on the Southern Route, for those that are new, I like to share some of my favorite things, people, and places. And I'd like to share people's stories and introduce you to fun and interesting people. And I have someone very interesting to introduce to you all this week. His name is Just Joe.
It's me.
That's him.
Howdy.
He's a very talented musician, singer, and artist, and you are going to love him. You can find him online and on social media as Just Joe. Welcome to the Southern Route, Joe.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So my husband has actually discovered you online. We love music. We love live music. We love going to eat and live music. We love going out and, having a drink with some live music, sitting on the beach with live music.
Yeah.
We just love live music. So anytime we hear somebody that we really enjoy, we find a lot of people on TikTok. And so he came across you and he's like, listen to this guy. So that's how you came to be known in our household anyway. And I have lots of questions about you and your career and Southern rock. So I'd kind of like to start at the beginning and just jump right in. Tell us where you're from and how you got started in music in general.
In general, I'm from Syracuse, New York. Well, I'm actually from a little north of Syracuse, New York. I could say the small town of Central Square, but most people are pretty familiar with Syracuse. So I always say Syracuse. I'm in the outlying area. So born and bred, lived here most of my life. There's been some times where, I went to college. I lived in Rochester and I lived in Baltimore briefly. Those are times to go to school, but I've always been here. But my musical journey started really, really young. I grew up in a not necessarily a musical household where people were playing instruments, but there was always music being played. I have two older brothers that were, one was 6 years older than me, the other one's 9 years older than me. So, they just listening to music all the time. And my mom was too, and my dad was too. And my mom had a piano in the house and she played when she was younger. And my brothers weren't really interested in playing an instrument, but I took to the instrument really early. 3 or 4 years old, you couldn't get me away from the piano. I was just always sitting at it. So my mom sat me down and started teaching me right around the same time I was learning how to read words. She taught me how to read music, how to do my basic scales and stuff like that. And I quickly outgrew everything that she could teach me. So then she's like, let's see what happens. Let's see how much you love this before we seek out a piano, teacher at that time. And I would just literally just grab my boombox or even my record player this time. This is in, late 70s, early 80s, bringing out my record player and setting it next to the piano, putting on the record or turning on the radio station and trying to play along to every song that came on to the radio. Like trying to find the key, trying to find where everything was. And eventually my mom realized that this wasn't just something I wanted to do for a little while. This is something I really show passion in. So we seeked out a piano teacher when I was about 8, and I took lessons from, the better part of the next decade, so that was the early parts of my musical journey personally, is listening to music and actually getting into playing music.
So you learned to read music at an early age, but it sounds like you can also kind of play by ear
Yeah,
as well.
I learned both, which, it's not always the same. Sometimes you learn how to play ear and then you learn how to read music. Or sometimes you learn how to play by ear and you never learn how to read music. I played in bands where guys like, yeah, I know how to play, but I don't know how to read any music. So, but reading music and being able to know the chords and everything and play by ear all came at the same time that I was learning how to read words. So it comes really easy for me. And I don't understand, like, how can you guys kind of wrap around this? But I was at that point in my life where, I was a sponge and I was able to just kind of do them all together. at once. So I was very, very lucky in that regards, because not every musician has that ability.
Yeah, usually I typically hear one or the other. We actually went to church with a guy who sang and could play some instruments, but he couldn't read a lick of music.
No,
So when
no,
they would say, what key do you want this in? He's like, I don't know. Let
I
me
don't
just
know.
sing it and y'all figure out what key it is, because he didn't even
Exactly.
know.
Exactly.
I found that so interesting because I can't sing. I wish I could sing. I love to sing. I sing anyway, even though I
Right.
can't.
Yeah,
And
you can
I put on a
sing.
concert in the
Whether
car or in the shower.
whether anyone wants to hear you sing is a different story, but
That's
you can
right. That's
sing,
right. I'm not getting paid to sing. That's for sure. So you've been playing in upstate New York since 2008, correct? Do you play
No,
shows
actually,
up there?
it goes further back. As Just Joe, I've been playing since 2008, but my professional career goes a little bit further back than that. Through high school and college and everything else, music was just my hobby, and I put it on the side, or I'd set up at a house party, or I went to somebody's house and they had a piano, like, hey, sit down, play some songs. So that was like the early parts of it, but it wasn't until 2000, the late 90s, when I dove into the music scene here in Syracuse, when a lot of my friends were playing in bands, and some of them were playing in some of the biggest bands in the area. And I kind of dove into that, and it was just a roadie, I was helping people set up or learn how to do sound or doing all those things. But I didn't know if I was ever good enough to be in a band. And every once in a while, someone would hear me sing. They're like, what are you doing? Like, what? What are you doing? Like, just loading the cabinets? Like, why aren't you singing for the band? So I started sitting in with some people in Syracuse, some in the blues scene, some in the hard rock scene, some in the heavy metal scene. I was really just getting my way. And then I went back to college to learn how to do recording and live sound. And during that time, when I was in Baltimore, I got a call from a friend back here in Syracuse. They're like, hey, you're moving back home, right? I'm like, yeah, as soon as school's done, my wife and I are moving back. So we move. He's like, well, there's this one band was having tryouts for a singer, and that band was pretty big at the time under a different name, but they got rid of the singer, and they were looking for a new singer, and they still had label interest. And the labels were like, well, cool, we want to keep us interested in as to what you guys do next. So I moved home and tried out for a band in September of 2001, and that band became a band called Brand New Sin. And that was like a hard rock, heavy metal, southern rock influenced heavy metal band, kind of like Leonard Skinner meets, Metallica. We had 3 guitar players, all of us very steeped in, in Leonard Skinner and in Molly Hatchet and Bad Company and that style of music, but also all of us grew up listening to Metallica and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. So, and some of those guys actually came from the hardcore music scene. So we kind of blended all of those things. And I tried out for the band and I got the gig. And to make a very long story short and kind of get you up to what the question was, is that I joined the band. We went and we wrote. They already had songs written. We put some vocals to them. I got to put my thing to them. We went into a studio probably 3 weeks later. We recorded some demos, gave them to the record labels that were interested us at the time. We had one label drive up from New York City. It was a small independent label out of Jersey, and came up and heard us and dropped a contract on the spot. And we signed a deal. So like I was in my very first band, and within a month, I was signed to a record deal, and we were recording a record. And then fast forward 6 months later, we're out on the road opening for Motorhead. That was one of
Oh
our
my
first major
goodness.
tours. So everything happened very fast for me. So my professional career basically began in the fall of 2001. And then I became what is now Just Joe in 2008. And that's where it kind of led to me now. But there's a lot that happened between 2001, 2008, and 2008 and 2022. So, it's been a 20 plus year journey professionally, and it's had its ups and its downs. So that's for sure.
So when you started playing with the band and all of this happened, you had this recording deal, you're out touring, you're opening for people like Motorhead. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what are you thinking? Are you thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing? Or were you
Yeah, I was thinking it was
overwhelmed? Or
amazing,
was it
and then
exciting? Or,
yeah, I was excited. But at the same time, everything was happening so fast. So I was just like, well, I guess this is how it works. Let's just go with it. And sometimes you didn't really have to think about it. But, looking back, I mean, there was obviously moments where we're all kind of pinching ourselves like, wow, this is what we're doing. Or, if it even wasn't Motorhead, we're touring with some pretty big underground metal acts or acts that were, selling out clubs or that we had listened to for years. But looking back on it, I'm like, man, that was a very unique experience. It's one thing to even get a record deal on the tour. It's another unique experience for me to join my very first band and out of the gate, like, have these opportunities. Like, that is very, very rare. So I'm just blessed, man. I was so happy, and I was like, man, this is what I always want to do. But it took me until I was in my later 20s to kind of realize that most people were doing bands when they're 15, 16 years old. I was a little late to the game because I would spending my time playing college football and getting, college degrees, thinking I was going to become a teacher, trying to do the quote unquote right and safe thing in life instead of being a starving artist, which I ended up being a starving artist, which is a whole another podcast within itself.
Well, I know you all can't see him, our listeners, on the screen, but we are doing a Teams call where we can see each other during this interview. But you don't look like a teacher. I can tell you that. You look like a musician.
There was a time there was very few tattoos, and I could cover it up, but it was yeah. I mean, that's what I thought I wanted to do. I think I mean, there was a time in my life I really wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach social studies and coach football, and I had those opportunities. I could have went into the public school system or, into the, the grade school system. And then I also had an opportunity to keep coaching as a student athlete once all my eligibility was up to stay in school, and also become a coach for my college team, which would have, a bunch of us all did that, and they all went on to be coaching high school programs, college programs, and everything else. So in a different reality or a different timeline, different dimension, I'm coaching football somewhere.
We're going to jump out real quick and take a break here on tncradio.live. We'll be right back with more from Just Joe.
Join Tom Kelly and the rest of the team each day on the Morning Grind. Then stay tuned for an encore presentation of last night's Landline Now. Weekdays on tncradio.live.
Hi, I'm Hope Savara. Join us every Monday on TNC Radio Live at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's Building Strong Minds.
This is Alec Debogorski, and you are listening to TNCRadio.live.
I'm Ron Samuels. We put it in reverse gear so you can enjoy the history of popular music and hear the soundtrack of life Wednesdays at 8 Eastern and 7 Central, right after the train station on TNCRadio.live.
Okay, guys, we're back here on tncradio.live here with Just Joe to continue our conversation. Now, did you go to school for social studies? Are you interested in?
Oh, I love history. Yeah, that's what I went. I originally went to college to be in sociology because I wanted to get into the FBI or become a cop. And I quickly realized I don't want to do this. So after the first semester, I changed my major to history because I really loved it during school. And I'm just one of those people. I love watching History Channel or documentaries or, reading books about, just goofy little facts and little things like that. And that goes for music. Like a lot of times I'll watch that stuff. I want to know. Like I watched a music documentary about a musician I don't even listen to, but I want to know their story because it's interesting to me.
I think learning the backstory about artists and why they write the songs they write and, how they come up with their ideas, I think that's very interesting. I love hearing the backstory behind that. So with that being said, do you have a particular song or a particular artist that really kind of jumped out at you early on and you said, wow, this song, this is what kind of set me on this road, or this artist or this band set me on this road?
Yeah, there was a couple different phases. When I was real young, I think what really blew my mind and changed it and made me go, oh my God, this might be something I want to do. Like when I got my very first Kiss record, and when I saw Kiss as, a 4 or 5 year old kid, and you're looking at this makeup and you're opening up Kiss Destroyer and Kiss Alive 2, and you're like, what is this? This guy's spitting fire and blood, and this guy's got a guitar that's on fire, and they look larger than life. They look like Marvel superheroes, and their music is so cool. It's like, that was the first band that like just blew my mind as a kid. And then any kid that goes back, I mean, I think any of us that are into that style of music or into rock music that are around my age, all will say Kiss, and then, Kiss was the first one. And then I listened to so many other things, but I think that next aha moment for me, because a lot of those bands that I listened to from that age all the way up until my teenage years were bands that were given to me by my brothers. My brothers were introducing me to different music and different styles of music. But it wasn't until I was like starting to watch MTV on my own, I was allowed to control the controller myself and watch what I wanted to on there. And I started watching Headbangers Ball with Adam Curry, and all of a sudden I'm like, what is this? I was introduced to Motorhead and to Iron Maiden and all these things. I lived in such a small town that the radio stations never played any of that stuff, so I was never introduced to any of that until MTV had these shows. And then from there, everyone was talking about my Metallica, but I'm like, who's Metallica? They didn't have any videos, so you weren't really introduced to any of them. So I didn't even know what they sounded like, people would talk about them. So one day my mom and I had a deal where part of my allowance every month or every week or every month was I was allowed to take my Columbia House.
Yes.
And go through the catalog and pick out X amount of dollars for music. And I was doing stuff up till then. And that time I'm like, you know what? I'm ordering everything Metallica got. I got Metallica's Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Garage Days Revisited. I bought everything they had out. They had Injustice for All not been released. Cliff had just died in Metallica. So I got those, and I had no idea what I was going to be in for. But I wanted to, I like this style of music. Everyone's talking about this band. I haven't heard them. And I bought their whole catalog. And I remember that day getting it. And I'm like, all right, well, what do I start with? Well, I start with the first record. I put in Kill 'Em All. And I'm just listening to it. I'm like, I just remember I could just sitting there with my mouth open and my eyes open, and my ears open, going, what is this? And then, it was that was the second time I had my mind blown. And that was the first time I discovered something completely on my own. And then I started buying Metal Edge and Hit Parader and Circus magazines. I was obsessed with that. And inside of those, Headbangers Ball was so, it was only a couple hours. They could only get to so many bands. But when you bought all these other magazines, there was like talking about all these other bands that weren't being even played on there, that were even more extreme, King Diamond, bands like Death, Cannibal Corpse, like, what is this? They don't play this on here. I need to hear this. And I'd heard it. And it was like, that was a really huge moment in my life, man. And I went down the rabbit hole big time, fast. So no specific songs, but those are like probably Kiss and Metallica were like the ones that were like, ahead of everything else.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not a huge heavy metal person. I do remember, I was in second grade, and I'm probably a little older than you, but I was in second grade. I remember my teacher would let us come in early, and we could listen to music before school started. I lived right across the street. Yeah. And me and my friend Susie and my friend Robert, we would go in and sit in her class, and we would play the Kiss album. Yeah. And second grade, and so, listen to a lot of Kiss. When it got to Metallica, I've got a handful of songs, but a lot of that stuff is, way heavy for me. Yeah. But I think the cool thing about music is, and that's why I like listening to live music so much, because there's so much that's not played on the radio. They play the same 40 songs all the time, and you get sick to death of them. But there's so much music out there, and I like music of all genres. And that's how you discover those bands that you're like, why have I never heard of these people? Right. Well, let me go get that album. I would never have bought that album. You don't even know the album's out there until you hear it on some random, I don't know, random live somewhere, or somebody shares it with you. Or there's songs in a show. the background of a show, and I'm like, well, who sings that song? I've never heard, and I've discovered people like that.
Right. I mean, nowadays it's so easy because you can either Shazam it or, put your phone up to it and figure it out. Or there's websites that like literally like, hey, that was these are all the songs that were played on this episode of, Yellowstone or Sons of Anarchy.
Yes, I found some on Yellowstone.
And so like, and then there's actually, you don't even have to search it. There's people that already made a playlist of each week. Like, here's the artist, and then you go inside there. So it's great, but like, back then, man, I wasn't like living way out in the boonies, but I lived far enough away where we had like a department store that wasn't even a real department store. It was like a local yokel department store that sold records, but they didn't have much. It wasn't until I got those teenage years and I was allowed to be able to go to the mall with my friends or take the bus to go to the nearest mall, which is, 20 minutes away. And that was when I went to the bigger record stores and I was able to dive into finding more records that I was reading about in Circus Magazine and at that time I really kind of stopped listening to the radio because I was like just diving into music that just wasn't a part of that world, and then there was this one record store that was just down the rabbit hole, and you got talking to these older dudes that were in bands in Syracuse, and they're like, yeah, well, have you heard of this, and then you start trading tapes. Or you making mixtapes for each other at school. You're like, hey man, check this out. I made you a tape of the new Merciful Fate or the new, whatever we're listening to at that time, So it was really cool. But I love where music is now and the discoverability, especially if you have a group of people that you really trust. And the next thing you know, you're going down this rabbit hole and you're like, oh my God, I never knew this artist existed. And you're like, they're now my new favorite artist. I want to see them. I want everything about them,
That's right. We're telling our age when we're talking about tapes, making a tape. But that's how we used to get music, when you didn't have the money to buy the albums. And friend, you buy this one, I'll buy that one. We'll make a mixtape and swap.
Or had to wait for it to come on the radio. Like nowadays, my daughter hears something like, Daddy, can you just play this? Or she goes, hey, I don't want to say it loud because my Alexa loves. She goes, hey, Alexa, play blah, blah, blah. Or goes on YouTube or goes to Spotify. And I'm like, honey, do you realize that one time, like you literally can listen to everything ever recorded, ever at the drop of a hat for nothing.
Yes.
Which is another whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I had to work for weeks, like going to my grandparents and mowing their lawn and like, taking the garbage out every night so I could make enough money to go buy one record because I liked one song, hoping that the whole record didn't like the rest of the record. Like, well, that whole record sucked. I got like this one song.
One song. That's right.
Oh God. I mean, but it's great. I mean, I love it as a fan and I love it for my daughter to be able to have that. But man, back then, or how about standing in line at midnight, waiting for the record to come out at a record store?
Absolutely.
On a Monday night, staying out late, not sneaking out, going to like a record release party to buy the new whatever record that was coming out, Pink Floyd, Metallica, Led Zeppelin.
I don't even think, do they even have record stores anymore? I mean, not like they used to. I know you can
not
go
like they used to. I mean, I think with how they exist now, at least in my area, it's for the collectors.
Yeah.
Now you're doing it like we have a record store in town that's been here forever. There's no chain record stores. I mean, obviously you don't go into Best Buy and buy music. I think they have some records here and there, but like for the most part, I'm in the vinyl. I started collecting vinyl again. So I love going to these places and buying either new vinyl or finding old records that I want to replace with because I really love the nostalgia of it all. I love the sound of records. Maybe not the best sound in the world, but there's something really cool about hearing cracks and pops and and all that stuff when you're listening to music. So yeah, there's a bunch of it. And in this area in Rochester, New York and Buffalo, there's a lot of great record stores, like actual record stores. But inside of there, you're just meeting, people that are just true music fans, that's where, people like us go to like hang out and, oh my God, did you see this, Grateful Dead record that no one can find anymore? It's here. It's like $700. I'm like, I don't want that. I can't afford that. But like, I love the nostalgia of it. I love the collecting portion of it too. So.
Ooh, we are running out of time once again. We're going to hop out and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back on the Southern Route on tncradio.live.
Hey, rideshare drivers and gig economy workers, the host of TNC Radio.live, the Rideshare Rodeo Podcast, and the Gig Economy Podcast come together for news, talk, music, stories, laughs, and more. We're live Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, right here on tncradio.live.
Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Kortman every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. As a professional driver, you are always being told about the importance of physical fitness, your health. But what about mental fitness? On the show each week, we take on a new topic, from loneliness to the power of gratitude to how to build strong relationships, all from the perspective of a driver's life. Every Monday on TNC Radio Live at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's Building Strong Minds.
Hey y'all, this is Curtis Grimes, and I want to give a shout out and a special thank you to everyone associated with tncradio.live.
Welcome back for our final segment. Well, there's still so much to talk about. We're going to try to cram it in, but there may be a part 2 with just Joe. Yeah, I've still got some vinyl too. I've got some 45s and my little pink record carrier case. You know, it has a laptop. I still have a bunch of those.
Take to your friend's house, like going over my friend's house, bring my records. You know.
And we still have the big records too. You know, they're still in the sleeves, and you know they've got some of them open up. You know, I've got some that open up and have all the pictures and the dialogue inside, and those are so cool. I need to get a record player so I can actually play them. And
I've been.
I don't even think we have a record store here, but there's a flea market type place here, and there's lots of records there, and I can sit there and talk. There's an older gentleman there, and he's got a lot of old Elvis stuff, and I'm a big Elvis fan.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times you go to like estate sales, or I rummage like Facebook Marketplace, and people know I collect records, and sometimes people hit me up, they're like, hey, do you want these? I have a guy that flips houses. Every once in a while, he gets a hold of me. He's like, hey, I found all these records. I'm just coming over and dropping them off. And whatever I don't like, I'll go through and grab what I don't like. And some of them are just beat up, and either I'll donate them to, Goodwill or Salvation Army or something like that. Or I find other people, or I find a record store that I'm friends with, because we have handfuls of actually vinyl record stores in the area. And I'm like, hey, you guys want this? And I just give it to them, and they know people within that network, and they just trickle it down. But I'm lucky to have those still around. Like that's unfortunate that you don't have an actual record store.
Yeah. I don't think there's.
Wait a minute. Where do you live again? Where is it?
I live in Alabama.
Okay. Well, that explains it.
Yeah. Well, little tiny town. I mean, I grew up going to record stores, but little tiny town outside of Montgomery called Wetumpka, and there probably are some in the bigger cities. Oh, yeah. There's probably some in Birmingham. I could probably drive there.
I'm sure you'd have to go to, but I'm lucky. I think we've got like 3 or 4 in town that are pretty decent, and some of them are bookstores / record stores. So one's like a real tiny niche, like record store. But if you go to like the Rochester and some of the bigger cities, there's some massive ones, and they have conventions around here all the time. You can go to like the Holiday Inn's got a record fair for the weekend, and there's people from all over the Northeast there. In the Northeast in general, like if you go up into New England area, that's one of the hotbeds for vinyl collecting in the country. So yeah, I'm very blessed to be close to. I have to watch myself, because next thing I know, I'm going out and I just spent $200 and I'm coming home with records, and people that I know, they're like, well, you have like 700 records. I'm like, what do you listen to? I'm like, I haven't listened. I've listened to maybe 10% of them. Yeah. I'm just collecting them because I like collecting music,
That's right. You just can't help yourself, especially when you find one that you weren't expecting to find, that little diamond that's hiding in there.
Yep.
That's awesome. So tell me this. Going from, the records and the tapes and being in a band and recording to where you are now, how did you jump from all of that? We're kind of fast forwarding because we need like another 2 hours to talk about everything in between there. But you have a huge online social presence and social following. How did you jump to deciding I want to do my music on social media?
Well, I mean, part of it existed because, to kind of go back and get me to where I am now. When I left Brand New Sin, like we had been in that band we did that band for about 8 years, and we toured for 8 years. We put out 3 records and EP, and we did quite a bit, but we were still broke. We never got past the opening band stage. We never got to a point where we made any money. And at one point we're all just like, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm in my 30s and I literally have $0. I have no car. Like, how long can you live this dream? So I was doing the Just Joe, I was doing the piano thing as a way to make money before we went back on the road. I was playing the bar circuit around here and playing cover songs and making a pretty decent living. So when I left the band, I just dove into doing my piano show 100%. And I started getting busier and busier and busier to the point where, pre-pandemic, I was playing 300 shows a year in and around Central New York, whether it's, a bar mitzvah, a funeral, a bar gig, a restaurant, a wedding, name it. I was playing it because I just have this versatility with my song list. So I was using social media, obviously, at that time to, promote my shows and putting up videos on YouTube and putting them up on social media so everyone could kind of see what I do. And it helped promote like all my shows or help me get more shows. And I was kind of like every once in a while I would stream on the Facebook while I was at a gig and people were like, oh, this is fun. And I heard about Twitch streaming prior to, the pandemic. And I was like, man, some people are like, maybe you should do this. You could do this on the side, maybe make, a couple extra $100 a month or, replace a few gigs so you don't have to be gone all the time. Cause I was a dad at that time. So like even being a local musician, it's still hard as a parent because you're away at night, you're away in the evening, you're away on the weekends when everybody else is not working, you're working. It'd be great if I could play a show every day from 10 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon, but no, everyone's working, so there's no one there to do that. So I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll start doing this Twitch thing, but it was hard to be able to pump the brakes on that. And then the pandemic came in, all my gigs went, all my gigs disappeared overnight. And I had a feeling, everyone's like, well, I'll just be a couple weeks or be maybe a month or so, and then everything will be back open again. And me knowing history and knowing how things work and how politics work and how all that stuff works, which, I don't want to get into that, but I foresaw this being a longer road than everyone was anticipating in my world, and I told all my musician friends, I'm like, dude, we're in trouble. Like we're going to have to pivot fast, or we're going to have to go get jobs, real jobs, some of us full timers. And a lot of people had to, if you're a drummer, how do you just go on and be like, hey, I'm playing drums on here,
Right.
Which you can, but you're not going to be able to generate the revenue that someone like myself can do because of being able to sing. So immediately when I saw the writing on the wall and I knew everything was going to close down, I went and bought all this gear and I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn how to stream on the Twitch. And I immediately on March 13th, right when everything was hitting the fan, I streamed my very first stream that day, and then everything shut down that next Tuesday or whatever. And I just started streaming 7 days a week, multiple times a day because there was nothing else to do. Go to the liquor store, buy some booze, make sure I had some food, and hey, let's sing to the
Toilet paper.
computer. And I had some help because the radio station that I work for, I don't do as much with them now, but I was on the air quite a bit with the morning show. They already had quite a following on there, so they were kind of piggybacking their following over to me, and we were kind of working together, and things just kind of rapidly moved inside of there because the networking inside of something like that, especially when everybody's home and all the musicians are trying to do this, we all found each other like, hey, what are you doing? How do you do that? And next thing you know, everything happened very fast for me on Twitch. And sometimes it takes them years to be able to get quote unquote partnered, get the purple check, get that verification on there. And I did it in a short amount of months, with the amount of viewership and all that. So that grew, which then grew my other online presence, which then eventually got me to like, all right, well, maybe I should start posting videos on TikTok. And then that went up. So everything kind of just, the pandemic helped open all these doors and other revenue streams for me. But that's how we got to be here. You and I wouldn't be having this conversation if all that stuff didn't happen, So in the music business, you either adapt or you die. And it doesn't matter if that was now or 10 or 20, 30 years ago. Like, things change, the formats change, we had records, we had tapes, we had 8-tracks, we had CDs, we had streaming. Now we have records again. It's like delivery of all this stuff. Before no one would ever see your video, but now you can put up a YouTube channel, put up all the videos you want. You're able to do so much, but you got to be able to cut through the noise. That's the hardest part. Like anybody can do what they do now, but how do you cut through the noise? So I've always been a person that's paid attention and just tried to follow a trend or just see where things might be going. And I was lucky enough to be able to. I think part of it was I brought 20 years of experience to the platform. I wasn't some newbie. Like I had real world experience. So I think that's part of my attraction that people are in. Like, wow, this guy's been there and done that. I mean, nobody here can see the video, but there's records on the wall behind me, and that's you're seeing a portion of all the albums that I've been a part of in 20 years. So it's been a hell of a journey.
Wow. So tell us what some of those albums are.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of them. The ones I can see. There's a lot.
Right. They basically encompass all three projects that I've been in. The one that I mentioned, Brand New Sin. If you see one, there's kind of like a pig on the wall. That was we did the record, so that's the hard rock and heavy metal project that I had. I also have Just Joe, which is more like of a singer-songwriter realm, because if you hear Brand New Sin and you hear what I do on the piano, it's really polar opposites, but I love all kinds of music and I have the ability to sing different styles. So Just Joe album is up there. And then I had another project called Elephant Mountain, which was more in a southern rock, not as heavy metal, more southern hard rock realm. I did a couple albums with some friends of mine here in Syracuse that was local.
We're going to jump out real quick and take a break here on TNCRadio.live. We'll be right back with more from Just Joe.
As a professional driver, the engineers at Frontlane know that you remain focused on the road regardless of weather and traffic conditions. That's not always true of the drivers behind you. Every 9 minutes, another commercial vehicle is rear-ended by a driver failing to control their speed. And guess who gets the blame? When you have to brake quickly, Tailbone illuminates a series of bright red LED lights that allow the driver behind you to react up to 50% faster. Using amazing accelerometer technology and a battery that will last for years, Tailbone meets the standard set by the NHTSA and the FMCSA. Learn more by visiting www.frontlane.com/tailbone. That's www.frontlane.com/tailbone. Approved in all 50 states, it's Tailbone by Frontlane.
Ready for the power of positive and something that will put you back to a time you wanted to last forever? Music is the ultimate time machine. What was your favorite time? Do you want to go back there? LTD Radio features the songs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that will transport you to a happier time. It'll make you smile and brighten your day. We could all use that about now. TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the great music of LTD Radio.
Okay, guys, we're back here on TNCRadio.live here with Just Joe to continue our conversation.
And then there's one record over here that's kind of in the middle. I think I'm pointing at. Let me see if right here, right there. That one is one of my favorite ones because for anyone out there who's a wrestling fan, my band Brand New Sin. Anyone knows the Big Show?
Big Show.
Well, that's me. I sing the theme song. So that's my favorite record we did with the WWE, and we sang the theme song to. I sang it. The band played it, and I did the theme song for entrance theme for the Big Show. That was one of my, that's my. But no, I mean, unless I tell you that, no one knows because it's a faceless. I think some people think it's the Big Show singing his own theme song. And it was his theme song from 2006 all the way until he retired from the WWE. And then another little story is about a year and a half ago, he started wrestling and working with the AEW. And the AEW tracked me down through Twitter of all places. And they're like, hey, we got the Big Show and he's going to probably start wrestling again. And he wants you to sing the theme song again. So he isn't wrestling yet, but the theme song is ready. They've used it a few times. So I also sing his current theme song in the AEW. Wow. So anytime you're in the wrestling world, if you're big in the wrestling world, you've heard my voice
for years.
So yeah, so all those records up there are ones that I've been a part of and compilation records that all my different projects are. But I keep that one in the middle because that's my favorite one, because I grew up a huge wrestling fan. I watched WrestleManias and Hulk Hogan and Undertaker and all that crazy stuff. I'm a part of the folklore now, I'm part of the history.
Yeah. Little did you know you were going to be part of the history of wrestling. I hope we call it wrestling.
That's a whole other podcast in itself, is the craziness that happened with the WWE. So.
Wow. See, y'all, we don't have enough time to talk about all of the things of 20 years, 20 years or more in the business.
I've had small successes, but I've been in this business, man. And this business, as anybody knows, regardless if you've sold millions of records or you're just a jobber like me, like a working musician, then, and stories upon stories that I could bore you for days with,
That's the fun stuff. So tell me this. So in all of your years, I mean, has there been a favorite artist or a favorite band or that you have met or become friends with, or just, some cool relationship has come out of?
Yeah. I mean, I can, one of our favorites is, as a band, is we got to tour with Black Label Society a couple times. And that Black Label Society is fronted by Zakk Wylde, who is Ozzy Osbourne's longtime guitar player. And all my guitar players were heavily influenced by Zakk. And our style of music was in that realm. But because of that time on the road, we became friends with, someone like Zakk Wylde. I mean, Zakk and I see each other now. We sit down. How's the family? How's this? We know each other. It's like, I used to have posters of you on my wall when I was a kid, now you're my friend, so there's a lot of those stories, but that's one of my favorites because Zakk and us really got along really well, probably too well, so much that like his wife and the management and the people that worked around, because we were at that time when Zakk was still drinking and we were drinking quite a bit. It was like a nuclear bomb every night with the madness that went on. But it's things like that, or becoming friends with, bands like Breaking Benjamin, or my other band opening for 38 Special, or me being friends with the tour manager from Marshall Tucker and getting a chance to go up and sing Can't You See with Marshall Tucker one time. And oh man, these opportunities. I mean, even last night, let me put it this way, without I'm trying to remember everything, but I'm just kind of give you a blanket idea of all this stuff. Last night I played a show in here in Syracuse, opening for a singer-songwriter named Dan Navarro. And Dan, you might not know the name, but he wrote the song We Belong for Pat Benatar.
Oh,
and everybody kind of knows that song, especially if we all grew up in the 80s. So Dan has an illustrious career, has written other songs, has had minor successes with his own projects. He's even a voice inside of Encanto, and is one of the singers on We Don't Talk About Bruno, So so I opened for him last night. And him and I struck up a friendship through Twitch about 2 years ago, and I've always stayed in touch. And he came to town. He's like, "Hey, I want you to open up for me. I would love to have you a part of the show." And then we were sound checking yesterday, and he's like, "Hey, man, do you want to get up and sing We Belong with me?" So we did a quick little 30-second rehearsal, and I got to share the stage and sing this massive song that I loved as a kid with the guy that wrote the friggin' song, So. Yeah,
that's awesome.
You asked. There's a lot of other stories, but there's one of my favorites, and one of my it's still happening to this day.
That is so cool. And people know the people that sing the songs, and a lot of times they don't know the writers of these songs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a whole other thing that people don't realize, that a majority of the time the songs that you're hearing are written by someone else. So there's stories behind that. But that was a cool moment last night. I came home and it took me forever to get to sleep because I was like, dude, this is my life. And sometimes these things happen so often that I don't know, I've gotten used to them. But then there's other times the 10-year-old or the 15-year-old Joe inside of me, dude, that just happened. What a cool thing.
What a life I'm living.
There's very, 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 very few people that get to experience what I've experienced. And it's not making me any better, but I just live in this alternate little weird universe and have crossed paths with huge people and have been a part of their I run into some of these bigger rock stars. I'm like, "Hey man, what's going on? How you been? Come watch the show." It's crazy, man. It's fun.
That's cool.
You know, that's the fun part of it. There's a real dark side to all this too, you know, and a real struggle side to it all. But I wouldn't,
Yeah,
you
it's
know, the
easy to
best
show
one,
the glamorous side and talk about the
yeah,
glamorous
you know,
side,
I
you know.
think, you know, there's times I'm like, what am I doing? I should just go get a job at Home Depot and do the right thing and maybe just, you know, be a you know, a 9 to 5 or stuff like that. And then I'd say something. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that, man. This is what I do. This is what I do.
This is who you are. This is what you
Yeah.
love. And, you know, that's where your passion is. So you mentioned earlier that you're a dad.
Yep.
So how has being a dad impacted your music? Now, you know, what, 5,000 plus songs, y'all. He can literally sing anything. And on
Yeah.
his lives, people will say, hey, sing this song or, you know, play this song. And he doesn't necessarily know that song, but he sits there and in you know, 3-4 minutes, bangs
Yep.
that thing out and he's singing it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could just learn anything. So tell me about the influence of being a dad on your music, though. Has it affected, you know, how you write, the songs you choose to perform, or
I mean, becoming a parent, anybody, man, it really changes your perspective on everything. You know, like now you don't got, you know, you're not worrying about yourself. You're actually putting another human's life way ahead of any of your wants and your needs and your desires. You know, and it changes your perspective. And a big thing that it really changed with mine is like, okay, I'm not just going out there making money to pay my cell phone bill and all this stuff. I've got to provide for my family. Now I got to provide for my daughter. I got to make sure that she has, you know, food on the table and sneakers, and she wants to do soccer. We have to buy the stuff for soccer. You know, it's like it really changes your perspective on things. As a writer, yeah, it's probably changed my stuff because I still write what I write, but there's times I'm like, man, my daughter's gonna really go down the rabbit hole of my catalog at some point with like adult ears and be like, Dad, what was this about? Or what was that
Right.
about? Or what are these things about? So I do have those moments. I'm like, oh my God. But it doesn't really change anything, you know, because I want her to be able to see, like, you know, this is Daddy's life. But man, she's been around me and seen me on stage and been on stage with me since she was in a, you know, in a carrier, you know, and she's all it's ever known as this is what Daddy does, which I think she's starting to realize what a unique experience that is for her as a kid. Not every kid gets to like just go backstage to every concert in town,
Right,
you know,
that's
and sit on
true.
the side of the stage and get to meet all these people and do the things that she does, you know. So, but I don't think it's changed what I do musically at all. I think I might write about it, but I haven't either quote unquote toned it down or anything like that. I'm still gonna be who I am. So, but yeah, it's changed my perspective on life more than anything.
I bet your daughter has a great respect for a wide range of music because
Oh,
she's
she
probably been
does.
exposed to a wide range of
She
music.
does. But she's also coming into her own, and I can hear her liking what she likes. You know,
Is it
she's
the
not.
same as what you like, or is it something totally
No, well,
different?
I mean, kids nowadays, what they're listening to is so different than what I listen to. So what her friends are like, what she listens to playing her video games, or what her friends are like, hey, my God, check this out, is really different. You know, more dance oriented, or
Yeah.
maybe more hip hop influenced. I don't know if she's really more into the hip hop, but she's really into the pop music. But she also, every once in a while, you know, you listen to her song list and you hear the classic rock influences that I like, and there's a couple heavy metal songs, and there's some pretty heavy tunes in there. So she has the wide range, but I've never really influenced any of that with her. I kind of let her go on this own journey by herself, and she has her own Spotify account. So, you know, she goes in there, you know, and I have the controls, and she knows, you know, what not to listen to if she, you know, she knows what's good or not. But she it's really interesting to see what she puts inside her playlist, you know. And I'm like, oh, what's this? And she goes, oh, I found this song, Daddy, on a playlist, and I really like it, you know. Um, so it's really cool to watch her go on a musical journey like I did, you know. It's like, man, this is cool, you know. I influenced a little bit, like check this out. But there's other times I'm listening. She's like, Daddy, can we not listen to music for a little bit? Can we listen to my music? So she's still a kid. I do the same thing with my parents back then, but then I got older and there's a lot of that stuff that my parents listened to that I'm gigantic fans of now, the old school country, the very old country, the very oldies, rock and stuff. So, yeah.
It's interesting. My kids are 22 and 18, so they're not young, but their playlists range from old country to 70s to current stuff I've never heard of, but I actually like, to my oldest, he likes some of the heavy stuff. And then next thing you know, he's singing sea shanty stuff. I mean, it is literally all over the place.
No, my daughter is the same way. And I think that's what's cool. I think us growing up, we often got pigeonholed because there was filters, there was gatekeepers to our music. Whether you're watching MTV, but unless you're staying up at midnight on a Saturday, you're not seeing Headbangers Ball. So you're only hearing the pop on there, or your radio stations are very limited. And especially if you live in certain parts of the country, I'm sure in Alabama, there wasn't like, hard rock stations. There were probably more country stations. There's probably something was more prevalent on the radio than there is in other places. Like up here, where we had like one country station. The rest was pop and all that stuff. So it's like you were influenced by that. Whereas now the internet really opens you up to listening to so many different styles of music that they don't have the filters that we had, and they listen without boundaries. I guess that's the best way to put it. Yeah. And it's awesome because they're like, I hear her sing out there, the sea shanty songs. I'm like, what are you listening to this pirate music, man? And it's just like, Dad, this is really cool. And there's this dance that goes with it. And so I'm like, all right, this is awesome.
I love it for me too. My oldest, both of my boys, they love a cappella type things. People that take music and, redo it and make it a cappella songs.
Yes.
I love it too. Cause I like music for whatever type of mood I'm in. And so my musical playlist would be all over the place. And I did grow up listening to country, and I love country, and I'll always love country, but I always love Southern rock too. And
me too.
And I just, when you get on the road and you're traveling, that's when I put the heavier stuff on. So I love that I have access to all of that at any given time. It's such really an exciting time.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing. Like, what do I listen to when I come back to now? And I listen to a lot of newer stuff, but like when I go back, I just want to listen to a lot of classic rock. Heavy metal, I have to be in a certain mood.
Yeah.
But if it's a blanket, like the main genre of music I'm listening to classic rock.
And so you also recently received an award. You received the Cheer Choice Award. Tell me about that and what that's for.
I'm actually still up for it. I'm in round 2.
Okay.
I was not. Yeah, I'm in round 2. I think there's 4 rounds of complete voting. And basically what they did, excuse me, is somebody submitted me, and basically the Cheer Awards are people who have really positive communities online. They're influencers on multiple platforms, whether it's Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, wherever it is. But you are a person that's bringing light to that and positivity to the community, to your communities, and spreading, good across the internet with your talent. And there's a bunch of different categories. There's music, there's podcasting, there's, arts, there's all these different categories. I'm in the music category, and I've been doing pretty well with the voting so far. And if I get to the final round, the top 5 get taken to Las Vegas for the Cheer Awards in April. But we'll see. Again, I'm holding no delusions of grandeur if it's going to go.
Well, everybody go vote for Joe for the Cheer Choice Award. I think that's an awesome thing to be recognized for. Positivity.
I'm just happy to be recognized.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself means a lot to me. And, if I go any further, I mean, a lot of those type of awards rely on you almost badgering your people to make sure they vote all the time. And it's like, man, I'm promoting so many other things in my life. Like, I'm going to promote when I can promote it, but I'm not going to shove it down your throat, because you and I both have that feeling where, if you shove something down somebody's throat, you're like, dude, I'm enough. Yeah. Enough already. I'm kind of annoyed. So I want it to, if something like that is ever going to happen for me, and like anything else in my career, I don't want to shove it down your throat. I want it to happen organically.
Yeah.
I want it to happen because it was meant to happen, not because I forced it to happen. Because anything in life, whether it's your music or your life, you force something to happen. You don't be surprised that it fails or has an outcome that is unfavorable to you.
That's right. Well, tell everybody where they can find you and what platforms and what you have coming up.
Well, I think the easiest thing is if you put in Just Joe into any Google search or Bing or whatever, Google, search that you do. I don't think anyone else uses but Google. But if you put Just Joe in there, I'm the top. I will be the first thing that comes up on the top of that thing. Or if you just go to justjoe.com, that will link you to everything in my universe. I stream on Twitch. I have a TikTok page. I play shows in and around upstate New York all over all the time. Gig at a brewery tonight. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. But if you go to Just Joe and Google search it or justjoe.com, that will lead you down the rabbit hole. Or if you're on a lot of the other platforms, it's Just Joe Syracuse. And that will get you. It's pretty easy to find me,
So go search for Just Joe. Everybody's probably using Google Chrome. That's what I use. But
me too.
Search for Just Joe, and it's going to pull up anything and everything that you want or need to know about Joe.
Go down the rabbit hole if you must. I encourage it.
That's awesome. Well, I know we listen to you on your live shows online. And you're live on what days?
It depends. Before everything got busy again, I was streaming 3-4 days a week. Now it kind of changes with how the amount of gigs I'm playing in real life. But a lot of times I try to stream as often as Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays in the evening, usually around 7:00 Eastern Standard Time. But that also changes. Like tonight I'm going to be streaming, but I'm actually going to be streaming my live gig from the brewery that I'm playing here in Syracuse. So, we try to always stay up on that. But if you stay on top of my schedule, you'll see when I'm streaming online and stuff like that. So for the people that aren't in the area, it's pretty easy to find me doing some online stuff every week in some realm,
Very cool. Well, I sure appreciate your time today. I know you've got a lot going on and you got to work tonight, so you got to get ready for that. I appreciate you spending time with us today.
No, I appreciate it. And I'll be back anytime. I mean, there's a lot of other stories. So if people dig it, let me know.
Absolutely. I think they will. I think you'll probably be invited back. If they don't, I do. So I'm going to want to hear some additional stories. So they have to listen to what I have to talk about. So.
Right, exactly. All right, Shannon, I thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Bye. Joe, thank you for joining me tonight. This has been an awesome interview. I have a feeling we're going to have a part 2, and we may have to figure out how to get you to sing some music for us as well. And everybody go check out Just Joe on the interwebs and be sure and listen to him and give him some support out there. He's doing great things with great music. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.
Join Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time for Women Road Warriors on your driver navigation station, tncradio.live.